Hello. Welcome to this special episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, myself, Ernest Owens. For a few segments of this season, I'm going to contribute to a special one-on-one type of conversation about some very serious issues in our community. Unlike most of our shows, we normally do a big, huge audience and we bring people on the stage. But for these particular episodes, for the next 3 episodes, we're going to try to experiment with certain subject matter by thinking in the perspective of different roles there. So my challenge for this episode is to talk about white privilege. It would be easy for me to bring someone in the audience to do it, but I thought that for myself to understand it is to put myself in the shoes of possibly someone who has it, and then try to challenge myself to negate it. So some of the things that you might hear on this show, might be a little offensive to some to take, but I think the best way that we can understand this topic, come to terms with it, is if we actualize ourselves in it, and maybe we realize something. So this is white privilege. This is how I see white privilege. I'm going to step myself into it. This is what I hear. This is the persona. This is white privilege. I am a benefit of white privilege. For me, I don't understand why race is always talked about. I mean, come on. Like, there's more things happening in society than race. Every time I walk around, I have to hear someone talk about Black Lives Matter. I mean, come on. Don't all lives matter? Didn't God create us all equally? I mean, let's get real here. Okay, the reason why people want to sit up and talk about this idea of privilege is because they didn't work hard. I went to school, I went to a good home, I got a job, I worked hard, and I had a good support system behind me, and I worked my way to make it happen. So why is everyone trying to act like black people or certain people, don't get those opportunities? I mean, I know racism exists, but I'm not racist. I don't use the N-word. I don't dislike black people. I mean, I have black friends. I mean, I think we all have black friends. I mean, I work with the guy who opens the door at me, the custodial worker at the restaurant. I mean, I say hi to them. I let them go. They know that I'm not racist. I would never want to actually say no black people can be here. You know what I'm saying? Now, don't get it started. Okay, sometimes I do get a little scared when I'm around black people. I mean, come on. So you gotta admit it. Some black people are a little, sketchy. I mean, I can walk down the street sometimes and, feel like the way that they have their pants, some of them have their pants sagging, that looks a little scary to me. And I mean, come on, let's face it. When you watch the news, who's on there doing the crime? It's black people. But again, I'm not racist because I know there's good black people like President Obama. I mean, I voted for President Obama. I mean, I voted for the first black president. So that means that I voted for him over a white guy, which makes me not racist. Because if I was racist, I would have voted for John McCain. But I wasn't going to vote for John McCain because come on, guys. Who really thought he was going to be a good president? I mean, Obama has swag. And speaking of swag, I listen to rap music. I listen to Kendrick Lamar. I mean, I love Beyonce. I mean, my God, Beyonce's so gorgeous. She's everything. So, I mean, if I was racist, I would really think that, I don't know, Taylor Swift is the only best artist, but we all know that there's other great people out there. So I couldn't be racist because I listen to all different types of music, which makes me get annoyed why people think that, Malcolm Moore and Iggy Azalea is culturally appropriating music. What is cultural appropriation? What is black culture? I mean, they got BET. How is that a problem? They say Oscar's so white. Come on. Denzel won an Oscar. Halle Berry won an Oscar. I mean, let's get real. Monique won an Oscar. So how is the Oscars so white when these black actors have also won too? And let's get real here. Why does everything again gotta be about race? I mean, come on, let's just be real. I mean, black people get to be on TV. I've seen Stacey Dash on Fox News. And they say Fox News is racist. How is Stacey Dash on Fox News, racist when Stacey Dash is black? And Stacey Dash agrees with me. Everything shouldn't be about racism. I mean, all this racial tension, do you really believe in racial tension? I mean, when I go outside, a police officer, I got friends who've been stopped by white police officers. I mean, black people aren't the only ones being stopped by police officers. I mean, come on. And then they talk about the education system is so bad in Philadelphia. I mean, take your kids to a good school. Get them good books. Maybe some of you all should just go work harder and read to your kids. When I grew up, my mother used to read to me bedtime stories, and I used to know the importance of education. So why can't some of you people, why can't you all raise your kids and stop fighting and getting on Instagram and using the VAM and all this? And then you want to say, Black Lives Matter. But what about the black people that kill each other, huh? Yeah, yep, you know them, killing each other in their own communities. But then you're mad at these white police officers for killing them. But they're not killing them. They're scared of them because some of them are scary. I mean, come on. I mean, think about some of the politicians that have, made laws. The 1994 Violence Act, they were trying to make sure that, people like that, the bad ones, not the good ones. There's some good black people like Oprah. Oprah's a good black person. I like Oprah, Tyler Perry, I like Tyler Perry, he's nice, he wears a suit, the way he carries himself, he has a good haircut, he got good hair on his shoulders, he worked hard, he, by the bootstraps, picked himself up. And that Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, that guy too, very smart, very articulate. He doesn't use all that slang stuff, He's a good brother. And I can say that because we're all from Africa. I mean, come on. We all are from Africa. I mean, there were all types of people. So I don't understand why everybody want to act like Africa is just a black continent. Come on here. Let's get real. There were white people in Africa. Charlize Theron is from Africa. Did you know that? So it's not just black people. So we can't make this all about black people. It can't always be about race. Come on, let's be real here. I mean, think about it this way. If the country can vote for the first black president, then we live in a post-racial society. Because what post-racial society means is that, there's interracial dating, and then there's people that get opportunities to prove themselves. I mean, all these, no one's complaining about NFL so black or NBA so black. Why is all those black people, get to be in the NBA and the football teams? No one complains then, huh? But then you want to get mad about the Oscars? Maybe some of these actors just can't act. I don't really see that many black filmmakers on TV. There's this guy named Ernest who has Ernestly Speaking, and it's got a black cast and crew, but, it's not too many of those guys around here, you know what I'm saying? So I don't really understand why people act like race is just such a big deal. Honestly, this is what I think. We should stop thinking about it, and maybe it will go away. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it will go away. So, I don't know. I had a friend one time, this black guy who I was friends with, and he tried to tell me the other day that, I have this thing called white privilege. And I told him, you got black privilege. I sure did. I definitely did. I told him he had black privilege because of the fact that, he gets to say the N-word, and I can't. And what's funny about saying the N-word is that, it's interesting because if it's such a bad word, why do black people get to use it? I don't understand. That sounds like a double standard. That sounds like somebody's being a hypocrite. Because if I can't say that word, you shouldn't be able to say that word, because at the end of the day, that word is a bad word. And that's why I'm not racist, because I don't say it. And you know what I think? I think some black people are racist. Black lives matter. Why won't they say all lives matter? Don't my life matter too? Don't I matter? Do I matter? Don't I believe they said equal rights. See, that's why I like MLK. Because, MLK wasn't like the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers, all they wanted to do was talk about this black pride movement. And then they got mad at the Ku Klux Klan because they said white power. And I don't like the Ku Klux Klan. I don't like the KKK. The KKK is really bad. Those are really bad racist people. I'm not them. But isn't the Black Panther bad too? Come on. They were, out there talking about black power. They were scary, and not every black person agreed with them either. There's still black people that agree with what I think. And they call those people Uncle Toms, but they're not Uncle Toms. Those are people that don't see race because they're colorblind. And a lot of them are just like me. And, a lot of us, we're Republicans too. So, we all recognize that this is not about race. So when they tell me about white privilege, I tell them simply, there's no such thing as white privilege because we're all Americans. We're all Americans. Stop complaining about the justice system. OJ got off. OJ got a trial. And you talk about that justice system. We all know OJ did it. So I don't understand how if OJ was able to get away with it, he got a fair trial, like with a black lawyer and everything, then I don't understand why you're getting mad about what happened to Trayvon Martin and the rest of them. Because at the end of the day, like I said before, it's not about race. It's not about race. It's not about race. So that's some of the things that I've heard for like my entire childhood when it comes to talking about white privilege. And for me, I think it's been an interesting roller coaster to have to hear that and experience that. And I've never really got an opportunity to take a shot and tell somebody, exactly what white privilege is the way I wanted to. An opportunity to express it to them in a very intense manner to, negate what a lot of people have to say. So if I had ever had the opportunity to talk to someone and tell them what white privilege looks like, this is exactly what I really, really want to say. So you don't believe you have white privilege. Really? You don't think you? Yes, you. The one who gets to come in from the back and the front of the room since the beginning of time. You don't think you have white privilege. Oh, you think that everything should not be about race, but every time you talk about race, you're always talking about what benefits yourself. Yes, you, the person who's white. Yes, you who thinks yourself to be higher because of the fact that you think I'm supposed to bow on your feet because you voted for Obama? Oh, really? Because you think that because Obama was black, that means that all of a sudden he is something to be the prize representation of all black people, because automatically, because he had a good degree, he wore a suit, you thought he was more valuable than the guy across the street that was wearing the hoodie, right? Oh, you mean to tell me the same type of no race, but at the same time, the only person you can name is your couple of black friends and a president, even though there's a population of, 13% black people in America? Oh, yes, but it's not about race. It's not about race because at the end of the day, you've decided to cherry pick which, acceptable Negroes was acceptable to be talked about. Oh, and I said the word Negro because you can't say the N-word. So then all of a sudden you decide to say for 1 second, I have black privilege because I can use the word that your ancestors used to me and because I decided to reappropriate it. Oh, so much privilege. But then I forget that maybe there's no privilege in that because at the end of the day, the rappers, the white rappers, the Malcolm Moores, the Iggy Azaleas, they can be able to do both. They can be able to say the N-word when they feel like it, but then turn around and say that they're taking a part of culture. There's no such thing as black culture, but at the same time, you want to say that only black people wear hoodies, even though I thought hoodies was something that everybody wore. Anyone know Justin Bieber? I thought so. So then we didn't say the criminal justice system. You say because OJ got off, and maybe I do think that maybe OJ did it, but then at the end of the day, how many other people in the community, mass incarceration, does that sound familiar? That wasn't something that necessarily was pushed for by the community. Black people didn't want mass incarceration. There was no such thing. There's no way you can tell me that most of the men that my age, by the time they get 26, I'm only 24, I got 2 more years left, will have a chance in their lifetime to get arrested by the police officer. Oh, but that's right, because all the guys who get stopped by white police officers are black must have done something wrong. But here's to tell you something. Have you ever heard of stopped and frisked? Have you ever heard about just stopping somewhere and being frisked for no apparent reason? Have you ever been stopped and frisked? Most likely not, because guess what? Our mayor's son never been stopped and frisked, and guess what? The mayor's son probably was a nut like me a couple of times, but guess what? He probably didn't get stopped and frisked because he didn't say he did, and he probably won't. And you know why? Just let's face it, because he's white. And the reason why is because there is a thing called white privilege. But then again, you say, how's the privilege? The privilege is that every day you don't have to think about race, because every day you don't consider yourself the race. Because when you're the predominant of society, everything centers around you. You complain about BET, but how many other channels on TV focus on you? The reason why there doesn't have to be a white entertainment television is because at the end of the day, every damn channel has you. But you complain because I get a channel that is not even owned by black people, ladies and gentlemen. It's actually owned by Viacom, which is a predominantly white CEO system. So they control the channel. But then they put some black programs on and you want to get mad. So you think that privilege means having some things that you're deserved of, because all of a sudden black privilege is no longer human rights. Human rights, to get human rights to be black means at the end of the day, it's a privilege. So I should be privileged. It should be my privilege that I am getting equal rights. The last time I thought about privilege, I thought privilege meant someone had an advantage. So getting equal rights means I have an advantage. Because at the end of the day, you thought it was subhuman. Because in history, there was no time that white people in American history was 3/5 of anything. Last time I checked, I was 3/5. And when we talk about Black History Month, why is my history in 28 days? Or 29 days because of a damn leap year. But your history gets to be in textbooks. My history is an elective. Your history is required studies. Not only is American history white history, but European history. But then we get to black history, we can't even talk about Africa. No. Because at the end of the day, Africa's not black, right? Because of colonization. So you're right. Yes, you're right. Africa's not all black because at the end of the day, there was colonization, right? And it took forever until the 1950s for most of the African countries to be liberated by guess who? White people. So was that? Apartheid? Does that sound familiar to you? Was it not racism? Oh, but you can't talk about racism because at the end of the day, you say you're not racist because you don't use the N-word. But you don't realize that it was racism the moment that you decided to say that there were some scary black people out there. And you thought that they were scary because of how they dressed and how they looked. So sagging now becomes a new norm for trying to figure out who is criminal and who's not. Oh, but I forget that it's so easy to not separate race and distinguish them because when you look at somebody who is sagging, you forget that there are white boys out there that listen to Justin Bieber, that listen to some of your favorite rap stars, and they can live in gated communities and suburbians with good educations. But we'll get to education in a minute. But they can go in those suburban neighborhoods and still be able to get jobs. I mean, you can still get drunk and crash over, make C's and make bad grades, but still be elected president. But, that was President Bush, right? He was able to make bad grades in school. He was able to make some mistakes down his life. And guess what happened? He still got elected to be our 43rd president. So maybe there was no white privilege in that, you think, because at the end of the day, the president of the United States, he had to go to law school. He had to go transfer schools. And he had a single parent household that he had to be raised. And even within all that being said, he was the president of the law review. But at the end of the day, of Harvard University, Harvard Law School. But at the end of the day, that didn't matter to you all because you still want to question his birth certificate. Because for some reason, after his second term and after his election, after being a U.S. Senator, we all of a sudden want to do a back check just to check if he was an American. But that wasn't racist because everyone always asks for a background check and a birth certificate on our favorite white presidents. Because all of a sudden, when you're black, you have to get another search of clearance. Because at the end of the day, stop and frisk don't exist. But then it's about informing ourselves in education. So you say that it's all about getting a good education and access to jobs, but you don't take into account mass incarceration, how many fatherless communities that we live in, how many communities are stifled by poverty, how many violent acts and things that has been put onto communities that begin to be squeezed. And you look at the education system. You look at a city like Philadelphia that's predominantly black. But when you look at the money and you look at the communities that benefit and don't, you ever look at gentrification? Have you ever looked at, Point Breeze? Have you ever went to South Philadelphia? Have you ever walked into those communities and realized that all of a sudden when there was a new cafe, I'm sorry, not a cafe, a bistro, when you saw a new bistro come into your neighborhood, and all of a sudden it was because of white people that was there, all of a sudden they started developing and they didn't take into consideration the community that was there. I'm sorry, those black communities, because every time we talk about gentrification, you never hear about black people moving into white communities because the moment black people move in, white people move out. The moment white people move in, black people move out. And then you realize the difference between that is not because of race, it's because of money, wealth, and power and class, which tends to go back to white people, which then suggests white privilege. But then we want to talk about education. You want to say to me, oh, Ernest, you should be grateful that you went to the University of Pennsylvania because of affirmative action. But then again, you're suggesting that because I was a valedictorian of a class of 1,000 people, because of the fact that I was a senior class president, because of the fact that I actually was a president of many organizations in high school, that doesn't matter because I was black. So you could consider race when it comes to my admission to college, but you can't consider race when it comes to anything else that you benefit off of. Now that sounds like a double standard. But see, it goes deeper than that. Because at the end of the day, you can easily not talk about race. You can easily say there's no such thing as privilege because of the fact that you don't use the N-word. Because now you control what racism is. You as the oppressor, you as the potential oppressor, cannot think for 5 seconds that everything you do in your life, no matter how much you want to escape it, can be the result of racism. Just because you don't think that you have white privilege and you're white does not mean that you can just poof, be gone. Because white privilege is more than simply just saying the obvious. It's not about just simply saying the N-word. It's not simply just saying discriminating. It's more than that. There's more context to that. It's more than just that. It's the moment that you can be able to be in a space and don't have to think about anyone else that might be affected. It's the fact that you can walk down the street and know that you won't get stopped by a police officer the same way to someone that's black. It's the same way that you're able to walk down the street and clench your purse or run around the other way or turn the other way when you see a black person and think that you're being safe when you're being actually pathetically racist. But again, the idea of white privilege means that we live in a society where currently right now, we want to act like it's a post-racial society. But too many of our young black men and women are being gunned down by police officers, being gunned down by crazy people that don't care about our lives. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that all lives don't matter, because your life always has mattered in a society. When has ever a time in history where white people's lives were threatened at the same rate in which black people's lives were in the criminal justice system? I will wait. Oh, I don't have to wait, because you already know the answers to that. Never. There's never been a time in American history where white people ever had to fear any other group in our country. So at the end of the day, your life has always mattered. We don't have to have a White History Month because of white history is in American textbooks. We don't have to say white lives matter because at the end of the day, they've been mattered. But black lives do matter. And there's nothing radical about that. If you feel as though it's racist to simply say that a group of people who's already been inflicted upon, already has suffered, has been the consequence of grotesque capitalism, racism, and systemic injustice, if you can't say that they matter and do not feel as though they do, then you don't think they matter. No, you don't think they matter. And when you say all lives matter, why is it that you never thought to talk about those lives that has been lost? Those people that have become victims, those families that have been torn. How come you haven't spoke about injustice before? Oh, that's right, because you're still mad about O.J. Simpson 20 years later. You're still mad about the one Willie Horton case that happened, another 20 years ago. You're still mad about those couple of token situations in society that has basically defined everyone else's livelihood. But again, that's your privilege. You have the privilege to think about that. I don't. And unless we can get to a post-racial society, which I doubt we will get to in the next 20, 50 something, 4,500 years, we have to learn how to coexist. We have to learn how to understand each other. We have to understand what's going on. In order for me to tackle white privilege, I have to understand exactly what it is. If you want to understand why Black Lives Matter, you have to understand exactly what it is. But we can't act like it can go away. We can't hide it under the rug. We can't sleep over it. We cannot deny it anymore. Because at the end of the day, if you call yourself an American, if you call yourself a human, then you recognize that my life matters just as much as yours. And that's how you get rid of privilege. Thank you.
You still got 3 minutes.
Good. Well, that's my interpretation. That's what I think about these issues. These are the things that, I haven't been able to express, been able to talk about for a long period of time. These are the things that I think more people have to have serious conversations about. It's a tough subject matter. It's something that for a long time I never really, felt safe to talk about because I'm working in predominantly white offices and spaces where people, feel like they can lose their jobs. They can lose opportunities. They can lose things about it. But you gotta start thinking about the future. You gotta start thinking about what's next. And you gotta have these conversations with your friends. For those people that say they got black friends, talk to them about it. Ask them what they think about white privilege. If you're white and you don't know, you gotta ask someone that you do. If you have quote unquote black friends like you say you do, it's important to ask them these questions because just assuming that everything is equal. And black people, don't be scared. People of color, don't be scared. Latinos, Asians, don't be scared to confront your friends about these issues. If they're your real friends, they will understand where you're coming from. They won't deny you the agency to express your opinions and thoughts. If they're your real friends, they understand already. They should have a glimpse of the reality. They shouldn't be tone deaf. We got to stop having people around us tone deaf. We can't let people continue to say foolish things out there and not check them. Use your social media, use Facebook, use Twitter to talk about the issues that really matter. It's so much easy for us to try to act like it don't exist and try to think about it as being negative, but that's a passive-aggressive way of thinking about it. It's not negative, it's problematic. Negativity assumes that there's this idea that there's a stigma to talk about. It feels like it's gonna be a problem, it's gonna be a crazy situation. It's not. You gotta feel comfortable. We have to, as a culture, feel more comfortable to talk about race. We gotta talk about prejudice. We gotta talk about these issues that impact us, because if we don't, we're gonna forever keep seeing these issues happen more in the media. We're gonna keep seeing more news stories. We're gonna keep seeing our children and our grandchildren and our grandchildren's children, and therefore, they will continue to have these issues in history if we do not feel comfortable in dismantling it. So, thank you so much for taking out the time to listen to this, and I hope that it impacts you, and I hope that it inspires you, and I hope it makes you think about these issues in a different way than you ever have before. This is part one of our three-part series on examining these things through 3 different lenses. Thank you.